Shedeur Sanders, yes, that Shedeur Sanders, son of primetime himself, just turned down a fifth-round draft spot from Ravens. Voluntarily. Because apparently holding a clipboard behind Lamar Jackson just wasn't part of the vision. And look, the internet exploded. Now before we dive into the chaos, let's be real. This wasn't just a random draft day decision. This was calculated, strategic, maybe even a little bit cocky, depending on who you ask. But one thing's for sure, this wasn't your average fifth-round story. This was a flex, a bet, a moment where a young quarterback decided he'd rather roll the dice than sit on the bench. And you're probably wondering, is Shedeur bold or delusional? Let's rewind. Leading into the 2025 NFL Draft, Shedeur Sanders was one of the most talked about QBs coming out of college.
If you're into the real story and all the messy twists they don't show on highlight reels, go ahead and subscribe. And if you're sticking around to see how this Browns QB chaos plays out, you should definitely be subscribed.
Between the Deion Sanders media machine and his actual performance at Colorado, the hype was very real. Some saw him as a day two guy. Others thought he'd slide further down. But nobody, and I mean nobody, expected him to straight up decline being drafted by the Ravens. The Ravens. A team with a rock-solid culture, a proven coaching staff, and, oh yeah, a little quarterback named Lamar Jackson who just casually won MVP again. So when Baltimore expressed interest and prepped to take Shedeur in the fifth round, you'd think that'd be a dream scenario. Learn under one of the best dual-threat QBs in the league? Be part of a consistent playoff team? Sign me up. But Shedeur said nah. Word got out, Baltimore had him on the board, ready to go. But Sanders' camp made it clear. Thanks, but no thanks. He didn't want to be a backup. He wanted a shot to compete, to play. Not next decade, now. So Baltimore, respecting that, passed. And just 3 picks later, the Cleveland Browns swooped in and grabbed him. Now hold on. Pause. This is where things get juicy, because let's unpack what just happened. A fifth-round rookie quarterback told a 2-time MVP's franchise he'd rather not. He didn't want to sit, didn't want to wait. And while that kind of self-belief is admirable, it also raises some serious questions. Like who does that? Cue Cam Newton, coming in with a whole sermon. On first take, Cam basically looked into the camera and told Shedeur, you don't waste talent. You don't walk away from that kind of opportunity. And listen, Cam gets it. He's lived that life. He knows what it means to be the guy. And he knows how rare it is to be in a building with someone like Lamar Jackson. Not just because of what Lamar can do, but because of who Lamar is. A true leader. A quarterback who's been underestimated. Who's been doubted. Just like Shedeur. That's the part that stings. Cam wasn't just preaching about football. He was talking mentorship. Legacy. The idea that learning behind Lamar could have sharpened Shedeur in ways he doesn't even realize yet. That maybe sitting for a while isn't a punishment, it's preparation. That greatness doesn't always arrive on your timeline. And then Stephen A. Smith, never one to let a spicy take slide by, jumps in like, look, I get it. I get why Shedeur said no. But come on, man. Because from a pure development standpoint, Baltimore might have been the best situation. Stable, strategic, patient. It's a place where QBs go to thrive. And Shedeur said no? Let's not pretend the Browns are some perfect fit, either. Sure, there's a chance he sees the field faster, but it's Cleveland. You want chaos? You want quarterback drama? The Browns are the blueprint. It's a place where promising careers go to disappear into 7 to 10 records and missed field goals in the snow. So again, was this a savvy move by a confident young QB? Or a self-sabotaging choice dressed up as betting on yourself? It depends on how this plays out. If Shedeur ends up starting, balling out, and turning the Browns into contenders, then this moment becomes legend. A bold choice that paid off. But if he struggles, if he's thrust into a system that doesn't fit, or buried behind other QBs, or traded around like a practice squad journeyman, then this is the clip that'll haunt him for years. And let's be honest, the NFL is brutal, especially for quarterbacks, especially young quarterbacks. You don't always get to pick your situation. Most guys don't even get to blink before they're holding a clipboard or learning a new offense. So when a guy like Shedeur does get some control, when he's able to shape his own narrative, it's rare. It's powerful. But it's also risky. Because talent alone doesn't guarantee success. Fit matters. Culture matters. Mentors matter. And sometimes being behind a superstar like Lamar Jackson can elevate you, not bench you. But you can't ignore the mindset. Shedeur sees himself as a starter, as a franchise QB, not a clipboard holder. And honestly, that's kind of refreshing. Because the last thing you want is a quarterback who's comfortable sitting. This is the NFL. Hunger is part of the job description. Still, the internet had thoughts. Twitter, or X, or whatever we're calling it now, lit up with every take imaginable. Some called him delusional. Others praised the move as a power play. Some just joked that Dion probably orchestrated the whole thing from a luxury box, while wearing sunglasses indoors. Which might not be entirely wrong. You can almost hear the conversations behind the scenes. We're not going to Baltimore. You're not sitting for 3 years. You're Shedeur Sanders. Your prime legacy. And the legacy talk? That's real. Shedeur's not just playing for himself. He's carrying the Sanders name into a league where his dad is practically football royalty. There's pressure. There's expectation. And there's definitely ego. But here's the million-dollar question. Will ego be the thing that propels him or buries him? Because NFL history is littered with guys who had the talent, had the confidence, but didn't have the patience, or the system, or the right support. That's why this whole saga feels so fascinating. It's not just about draft picks or depth charts. It's about what it means to believe in yourself in a league that chews up young talent and spits it out before halftime. It's about taking your shot and living with the outcome. And maybe, just maybe, it's about proving that the next generation of quarterbacks doesn't want to wait their turn. They want the stage now. And they'll say no to even the most prestigious teams to make that happen. But here's the kicker. If Shedeur ends up benched in Cleveland, or worse, traded, cut, forgotten, then this becomes the cautionary tale. The one about the kid who said no to a dynasty and yes to dysfunction, who passed on mentorship for the mirage of opportunity. NFL scouts might not say it out loud, but they're watching. Other front offices are, too. Because if Shedeur makes it work, suddenly players have more power, more say, more leverage. If he doesn't, doors will quietly start to close. So what did we learn today, kids? Maybe sometimes saying no isn't defiance, it's destiny. Or maybe it's just an expensive mistake in disguise. Either way, Shedeur Sanders just made one of the boldest moves of this year's draft. And now the whole football world is waiting to see how it plays out. Will he rise? Will he crash? Will he wish he'd taken that seat behind Lamar? Stay tuned. And hey, if you've got thoughts, because let's be real, this story is the kind of thing people argue about in group chats for days. Drop your take in the comments. Was Shedeur brilliant or bananas? Would you have said no to Baltimore? And don't forget to hit that subscribe button, because in the land of football drama, this saga's just getting started. This wasn't just some kid turning down a mid-round draft spot. This was a full-on statement, a vibe shift, a young quarterback telling a legacy team, thanks, but I'm not interested in sitting behind greatness. I'm trying to be great now. And that's what makes this so uncomfortable for some people. Because there's an unwritten rule in the NFL. Right? You wait your turn. You pay your dues. You earn your spot. Especially if you're a late round guy. Nobody's rolling out the red carpet for fifth rounders. You get in, you grind, you prove yourself in silence. Maybe you get a preseason drive or some garbage time action by week 13. But mostly, you sit, you learn, you hope for a chance. But Shedeur? He looked at that formula and said, that's not for me. And it's jarring, because it's not how we're used to seeing quarterbacks behave, especially ones who aren't day one darlings. He didn't just buck the system. He publicly swerved out of the entire lane. But is it really that wild, or are we just not used to seeing young black quarterbacks own their narrative from day one? Because if you peel back the layers, this isn't just a football decision. It's a generational one. Shedeur Sanders grew up not just around football, but around power. His dad isn't just an NFL Hall of Famer. He's Deion. Coach Prime. The guy who flipped the script at Jackson State, took over Colorado with a pair of sunglasses and a mission, and told every recruit in the country that they didn't need to beg for a seat at the table. They could build their own. That's the mindset Shedeur was raised in. So when people gasp and clutch their pearls because he declined the Ravens, you kind of have to laugh. Of course he did. This is what Deion preaches every single day. Bet on yourself. And Shedeur? He listened. But betting on yourself and outplaying the odds are two very different things. Let's talk pressure. Because now the spotlight on Shedeur is 10 times hotter than it would have been if he just quietly slipped into Baltimore, held a clipboard, and waited for an injury or a preseason blowout to get some snaps. Now, the stakes are sky high. He's not just fighting for a job. He's fighting the narrative. If he doesn't win a starting role in Cleveland, people will say he made a mistake. If he gets benched mid-season, they'll say he wasn't ready. If he gets overwhelmed by the speed of the league, they'll say, should have sat behind Lamar. No one is rooting for him to fail, but everyone is watching to see if he does. And honestly, that's a brutal place to be. Because this isn't college anymore. There's no safety net. There's no Coach Prime to protect you from bad headlines or questionable calls. This is the NFL. It's faster, nastier, colder. And once you start making business decisions like this, you get treated like a business. No more rookie grace period. No more he's still learning. You turn down your mentorship moment. So now, you better show up like a leader. And Shedeur clearly thinks he can. You can tell from the way he talks, the way he moves, the way he handles interviews. He's got that it factor. Swagger without stumbling. Confidence without cracking. But there's a fine line between self-assurance and self-destruction. Because what happens if the Browns have no plan for him? What if the opportunity he saw is really just a mirage? A bad offensive line, a carousel of receivers, a coach on the hot seat. What if this becomes just another chapter in Cleveland's long, cursed history with quarterbacks? We've seen this story before, right? The Browns have been through more QBs than Marvel has reboots. And while things have stabilized a bit in recent years, let's not act like this is the ideal landing spot for a guy trying to make a name for himself. If anything, it's the football version of walking into a haunted house and saying, yeah, I'll sleep here. This is where Cam Newton's point hits hardest. Because Cam knows what a quarterback needs to succeed. Not just talent, but infrastructure, culture. Someone to lean on when the lights get too bright. And Baltimore? That's a fortress. That's the place you go when you want to grow into something bigger. Not rushed. Not forced. Just refined. But instead, Shedeur went straight into the deep end. No floaties. And the part that really twists the knife? It's that Lamar Jackson could have been the perfect blueprint for him. Think about it. Both dual-threat QBs. Both heavily scrutinized. Both carrying the weight of proving something to people who've already decided they don't belong. Lamar is the living proof that greatness can be crafted, not just born. That you don't have to fit the mold to reshape the league. And Shedeur said no to learning from that. Not because he doesn't respect Lamar. Not because he thought he was better. But because he wanted to run his own race. It's gutsy. It's wild. And it might be genius. Or it might be the beginning of a career that never quite gets off the ground. We won't know for a while. Maybe not for a whole season. But what we do know is this. Shedeur's already made himself one of the most talked about rookies in the NFL. Not because of his stats. Not because of some viral play. But because he made a decision that challenged the hierarchy of how this league operates. And love it or hate it, that takes guts. Let's also not forget the legacy pressure. This isn't just any rookie. He's the son of Deion Sanders. That's not just a last name, that's a brand. The minute Shedeur touched a football, he wasn't just building a career. He was extending an empire. That kind of weight, it doesn't go away. Every bad throw, every interception, every press conference, it'll all be compared to what Prime would have done. And now that Shedeur's made this highly public, highly scrutinized choice, the microscope just got way closer. He turned down mentorship from Lamar Jackson to chase a faster path. He bet on himself. He said, "I'm not here to wait. I'm here to lead." Now the question is, can he? And look, we're not here to root against anyone. We want the drama and the happy ending. The redemption arc. The bold choice that pays off. The guy who took the risky road and came out with the crown. But it's the NFL. The script isn't always that kind. Sometimes you get your moment and seize it. Other times, you become a trivia question. Hey, remember that guy who said no to the Ravens? So what's the moral of the story here? Maybe it's that success doesn't follow a single path. Maybe some guys do need to sit and learn. Maybe others thrive when they're thrown into the chaos. But either way, when you say no to one of the league's most respected franchises, you're not just betting on yourself. You're raising the stakes for everyone watching. And whether Shedeur's move ends in stardom or struggle, one thing's for sure. He's not playing by the old rules. He's writing a new script. One that could redefine how young quarterbacks approach their careers, or become a cautionary tale for every draft class that comes after. Either way, you'll remember where you were when you heard Shedeur Sanders declined the Ravens. Shedeur Sanders isn't just chasing a career. He's stepping into a role he's been trained for since birth. This isn't some underdog tale. It's not rags to riches. This is a groomed for the spotlight type of origin story. And that changes everything. Because when you grow up watching your father redefine what success looks like, not just as a player, but as a personality, a coach, a brand, you don't just play football. You understand the machine. You know what it takes to win on the field and in the narrative. You know how to create leverage, how to manipulate the media cycle, how to walk into a press conference and turn it into a mic drop moment. So when Shedeur said no to Baltimore, that wasn't just about depth charts and playbooks. That was about optics. Control. He didn't want to be buried under someone else's legacy. Not even Lamar's. And look, that's not disrespect. That's ambition. Maybe even too much ambition, depending on who you ask. But this is the thing with prodigies. They rarely follow the expected path. They don't want to sit on the shelf and gather dust. They want the lights, the ball, the pressure, the glory. They want to walk into the room and change the vibe. And whether or not you agree with the decision, you have to admit, it changed the vibe. This draft class suddenly got a villain origin story. Or a hero's beginning, depending on where you stand. And the Browns? They're suddenly sitting on a media time bomb, whether they wanted it or not. Because now, every snap Shedeur takes will come with baggage. Not just the baggage of proving he belongs, but the baggage of proving he was right. That's the tricky part. It's no longer about potential. It's about receipts. Because saying no to a team like the Ravens means you better be ready to prove they missed out. You better show up with that arm cocked and ready, with poise, with play-calling instincts, with leadership oozing out of every huddle. You have to not only perform, you have to justify the entire choice. Meanwhile, let's check in with the Ravens. Because this isn't their first rodeo. They don't get caught up in drama. Baltimore keeps it moving. This isn't a team that needs the noise. They've got a system, a star, and a city behind them. And now they've got a shiny new footnote. Yeah, we almost drafted Shedeur Sanders, but he passed. Which adds another layer. Because now, they look like the grown-ups in the room. Like the ex who took the high road after being dumped via text message. They could have made a scene. Could have leaked the phone call. Could have done the whole, we didn't really want him anyway routine. But instead, they just pivoted and let the storm circle elsewhere. And guess what? That calm, unbothered energy only makes the whole situation worse for Shedeur if things go sideways. Because if he starts to struggle, if he tosses a few picks, if the Cleveland media starts sniffing blood in the water, those Ravens headlines are going to haunt him. Every interception will be followed by a churn. Could have been mentored by Lamar Jackson. Every loss? Maybe sitting wasn't such a bad idea. That's what makes this decision such a pressure cooker. Because most rookies come into the league with a grace period. You're allowed to mess up. You're allowed to learn. But when you made the call, when you chose the fast lane, the league doesn't care if you get whiplash. And let's talk about that mentorship angle for a second. The idea of sitting behind a Hall of Fame-level player used to be seen as a gift. Aaron Rodgers learned behind Brett Favre. Tom Brady sat before taking over. Even Patrick Mahomes got to watch for a season. It's a time-honored tradition. Sit, learn, sharpen. But this new wave of players? They don't want to wait. The new model isn't develop slowly. It's blow up fast. It's TikTok virality. Nil contracts. Day one starter energy. They've been monetizing their name since college. They've got agents, managers, branding teams before they even have their playbook memorized. Sitting doesn't build hype. Sitting doesn't trend. And let's be honest, Shedeur Sanders is a brand. The name alone brings cameras, coverage, controversy. He's not some unknown from a mid-major. He's the face of the Deion Sanders expansion pack. So of course he's looking for more than just a jersey. He's looking for a platform. But the NFL isn't college. It doesn't care about your Instagram followers. It doesn't care that you were the man at Colorado. It cares if you can handle a blitz on 3rd and long. If you can bounce back from a two-pick game. If you can read a defense before they eat you alive. That's why this whole move feels like a gamble wrapped in confidence, wrapped in dynasty pressure. He didn't just say no to a franchise. He said yes to himself. And in this league, that kind of self-belief can either make you immortal or unemployed. So where does that leave us? Well, now the Browns have to decide how to use Shedeur without breaking him. Because too many young QBs get thrown in too fast and never recover. It's a tale as old as time. Draft, start, collapse. Wash, rinse, repeat. If Cleveland rushes him, he could burn out. If they slow play it, the media might spin it as a failure. If he doesn't win the locker room, good luck leading a team full of grown men who know when someone's not ready. It's a tightrope. And Shedeur's walking it in front of the whole world. Meanwhile, Deion is watching. Probably already scripting the "I told you so" speech. Maybe even designing matching father-son gold jackets, just in case. Because for Prime, this isn't just about Shedeur making it. It's about proving that his blueprint works. That you can raise a QB, market him, manage him, and launch him into the NFL with his own destiny in his hands. And if Shedeur succeeds, that blueprint becomes the new norm. You'll see more players controlling their narrative, declining picks, refusing to sit, demanding the spotlight before they've even earned a highlight reel. But if he fails, well, the NFL loves a good comeback story. But it also lives for the flameouts. Because this league doesn't just crown kings, it chews through them like popcorn. So here we are, on the edge of what could be the start of something revolutionary, or the beginning of a very public unraveling. Shedeur Sanders turned down stability, mentorship, and a respected franchise in favor of chasing the fast track. He said no to Baltimore and yes to Cleveland. He wanted the risk. He wanted the opportunity. He wanted to write his own legend. And now, the pen's in his hand. The stage is set. But in the NFL, the spotlight doesn't forgive. And the clock never stops ticking. So what do you think? Is Shedeur Sanders the next great NFL disruptor? Or just another quarterback who believed the hype before the game even started? Leave your thoughts in the comments. Let's hear your hottest takes, bold predictions, and maybe even your own fantasy trades while you're at it. And if you love this kind of behind-the-scenes drama, high-stakes chaos, and quarterback power plays, make sure you subscribe. Because in the league of unhinged decisions and legacy-level ego, this is just the first quarter.